Hey, Dr. Paul down here on the beach. I'm in Daytona Beach behind me here. I ran into a couple chiropractors. Young guys coming out of school, starting practice. They're getting ready to run right into the two common most mistakes chiropractors make coming out of school, starting a practice. Number one, you have to learn patient education. You just have to, because market forces, in other words, you got to know how to talk to patients so they understand care and stay for care, bottom line. Because here's what you get, and until you know how to do that, and when I ask the chiropractors, this is kind of what shakes them into reality. I said, let me ask you a question. You get up 3 times a week, wanting to drive 20 minutes to go to the dentist office, wait about 10 minutes in his office, take about 20 minutes to get treated, and then pay $50 to $70, and then drive another 20 minutes back home. And do you want to do that 3 times a week? That kind of shocks them. I said, well, that's what you're going to get. I said, people aren't just going to come in because you want them to come in. I said, you have to be able to shift patient education, because remember, all the patients are symptom-based. Yeah, however old we are, those are just natural defense mechanisms. And we don't act on things until we hurt. That's natural and normal. And so that's all we know as consumers to base our care on, unless there's a shift in consciousness. In other words, the patient education gets the patient's consciousness to shift from what's called unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, to where they now know why they need to stay for care, and it's not just periodic symptoms. That's not easy to do, and that's very specific. It's not just telling somebody, you need to do this or that. That's not how it works. I said, if it was that easy, then the dentist would just tell you to do this, and you would do it. You wouldn't think anything about it. And that's not reality. So, and then chiropractors get out, and then they realize, patient come in 3, 4, 5 visits, they feel better, and they quit coming in. So that's the very first thing you have to learn. When I have clients, that's the first thing I teach them right away. You've got to learn patient education and shift the patient's consciousness that their care is not just based on symptoms, it's based on all of their biomarkers relative to all 3 phases of healing. And that's not easy to do. You do have to know a few things to do that. Now, the good news is once you do that, the patients get it. And then you just have to make care affordable. But when you do that, they come back for their care, because now they understand the whole picture. Not just feeling a little better here, because they can actually feel better, stop care, just like with taking medication. You stop taking your medication, the infections come back. They can come back. Well, the difference with care, physical medicine, is you stop with care before you complete the 3 phases of healing. It leads to permanent problems to some degree the rest of your life. It could be minor, but you take a few of these minor issues and stack them on one another, and next thing you know, you got a big problem 3, 4 episodes later. So that's a big problem, number one. Number two, I said, where are you going to get new patients? I said, there's only 8% utilization within a geographic radius of draw of maybe 3 miles, depending on if you're in an inner city, suburb, or rural, how far somebody's going to drive to you. The 80% of patients drive within only 3 miles in a suburb. That's it. And then you have only 8% within 3 miles, and you're competing with all the other chiropractors in that area. That's why, if you don't know the basics of marketing, you may get like 4 to 6 new patients a month, maybe. And then they only want to stay for like 5, 6 visits. That's called market forces. This is why so many chiropractors don't do well, and there's a huge failure rate. The great news is, when you do know how to do these things, there's tremendous amount of paid people that need chiropractic care, but they're not looking for chiropractors. They're taking medications, drugs, but they're not just going to switch to you because you say, oh, come to a chiropractor, I can help. That's not how it works. So you have to learn the basics there's 3 types of marketing. Either it's publicity, you got to learn the basics of advertising, or you have to learn the basics of educational sales. One of those 3, the determines what kind of patients you're getting, how many you're going to get. You got to learn the basics to overcome market forces. Great news is once you learn that, you create way more business than you physically can handle, and that's why I was able to open 77 offices in 20 states, seeing over 600,000 patient visits a year. There's no way I could have done that if I wouldn't have known, if I'd have just let patients come in, not known how to communicate with them. They just stayed for 5, 6, 7 visits until they feel a little better. So they didn't even stay for the 3 phases of healing, which doesn't help them at all. And then I didn't know how to get. If I didn't know publicity, advertising, or educational sales, I'd get market forces of 4 to 6 new patients, and that's it. But the great news is once you understand patient education, patients will stay, and then you just make it affordable. All the patients, we've never turned patients away from care. And then there's a tremendous amount of new patients. 92% of the people don't even go to chiropractors. Out of that, 75% of them have a chiropractic problem, back pain, neck pain, headaches, some kind of injury. They're not looking for chiropractors. So you do have to learn either publicity, advertising, or educational sales. That's the way it works. And that's why chiropractors typically don't even maximize their potential. That national average is 107 visits a week. Typical chiropractor, physically, emotionally, mentally, if they actually knew how to get business and keep it, it's about 200 visits a week. Most chiropractors don't even maximize their potential. They leave half the revenue on the table. It's kind of like a hotel going through a night and it's only half full. Well, you're there. Chiropractors are there anyway. You're in your office. You're only seeing half the amount of patients you could see. That's usually $250,000 a year in loss every year for the average chiropractor. They don't even think of it. They don't even think of it like that. And so there you go. Now they got to work the rest of their life. They typically don't take many vacations. They typically can't hire associate doctors because they don't have enough business. They don't know how to get business and keep it. And so that's why you have a lot of chiropractors. The estimates are as much as 50% aren't practicing 5 years later. And I can say that's true from my class statistics, from what I've seen. And that's the bad news. The great news is there's huge potential once you know how to do it. But for whatever reason, chiropractors, just like all the kids I just talked to, I talked to several recent graduates, they don't even know what they don't know. They think they're just going to open their doors and they're going to get a lot of new patients. It's going to happen that way. I'm like, boy, oh boy. So the very first thing you can do when you graduate, and I say this all the time, the very first thing you can do is learn basic business concepts before you open. Associate, hire somebody, do something to learn the basic business concepts of patient education and marketing. And once you know that, sky's the limit. Anyway, I'm Dr. Paul. I'm a consultant, opened 77 offices in 20 states. And of course, this is what we teach. But it's so sad to see these young kids that are just running out, about to get slaughtered. They don't even know it. But you got to let them go because they're not ready to listen to you. They listen to you after they hit the bricks, after they go under. That's when they're like, oh. And sometimes it's too late. Sometimes they just get fed up and they just leave the profession. And that's a shame. Anyway, just another tip on how to start a chiropractic office. Give me a call if you want to learn the basics on how to have a successful practice before you hit the wall. Again, I'm Dr. Paul. You can check out my website, drpaulhollern.com.